Bombshell findings disclosed in Dalton tonight. Former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot revealing her full report after a months-long independent investigation.
Casey Cornice is live there with the latest. Casey.
A packed room of eager spectators sat on the edge of their seats, awaiting the highly anticipated report that was set to be unveiled. The report, which had been the subject of much speculation and public interest, was expected to shed light on the alleged mismanagement of taxpayer dollars by the city's mayor, Tiffany Henyard. The atmosphere in the room was thick with tension as community members, journalists, and public officials alike anticipated the contents of the investigation that had dominated local headlines for weeks. However, despite the gathering's expectations and the anticipation that had been building for months, one notable figure was conspicuously absent: Mayor Tiffany Henyard herself. The mayor, whose name had been at the center of the controversy, was nowhere to be found at the crucial moment. Her absence from the event raised immediate questions and fueled speculation about her potential involvement in the allegations, leaving the crowd to wonder why she was not present to address the matter in person. As the room filled with murmurs and whispers, the absence of the mayor took center stage, overshadowing the report that was supposed to be revealed. Community members and officials had hoped for some sort of explanation from Henyard regarding the allegations of financial mismanagement, which had sparked an investigation into her office's handling of taxpayer funds. With the mayor's no-show, the public was left to piece together the details of the report without her direct input. The report, once finally presented, painted a troubling picture of the mayor's administration. According to the findings, there were numerous instances where funds intended for public programs and services had been misallocated or used inappropriately. The investigation uncovered discrepancies in financial records and raised concerns about a lack of transparency in the way taxpayer dollars were managed. This left many questioning whether Henyard had truly been negligent or if there was a more deliberate attempt to obscure the true nature of the expenditures. In the absence of the mayor, several city officials and residents spoke out, demanding accountability and greater oversight in the handling of public funds. Some voiced concerns about the potential long-term impact of such mismanagement, especially in light of the city's ongoing financial struggles. Others questioned whether Henyard's failure to show up was indicative of a larger pattern of evasiveness and a lack of responsibility. The absence of Mayor Tiffany Henyard at the report revealed only deepened the mistrust and frustration that had been simmering among residents. Many wondered if her absence was an attempt to avoid facing difficult questions or if it was simply a reflection of her lack of commitment to transparency. Regardless of the reasons behind her no-show, it was clear that the controversy surrounding her administration was far from over. As the meeting drew to a close, the crowd left the venue with more questions than answers, and the debate over Henyard's leadership and the fate of the investigation continued to dominate local discussions. The report had certainly provided some insight into the financial mismanagement allegations, but the mayor's absence left a cloud of uncertainty hanging over the entire situation. The community, now more than ever, was eager to see how this issue would unfold and whether those in positions of power would take meaningful action to address the concerns raised.
At least as early as late 2021, there was a concerted, systematic effort on behalf of Mayor Henyard and others in her administration to hide the true financial condition of the village of Dalton from the trustees and from members of the public.
Last April, former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot was appointed by a group of village trustees to conduct an independent investigation into the financial status of the village. The investigation was initiated due to growing concerns about the management of public funds and increasing questions about the transparency of financial operations within the local government. The trustees, who were responsible for overseeing the village's budget, had raised alarm bells after noticing significant discrepancies and a lack of clarity in the financial reporting. Upon beginning her investigation, Lightfoot delved into the financial records and interviewed key personnel within the village's administration. Her findings were both startling and concerning, revealing that the village trustees had been intentionally kept in the dark about the true extent of the financial situation. According to Lightfoot's report, key financial details had been deliberately withheld from the trustees, obstructing their ability to make informed decisions about budgeting and expenditures. The investigation uncovered several instances where the trustees had been excluded from crucial discussions about spending decisions. with critical information not being shared with them in a timely manner. In some cases, large financial transactions had been approved without proper oversight, leaving trustees unaware of the full scope of spending. This lack of transparency not only undermined the trustees' ability to fulfill their duties, but also raised significant questions about the motivations behind such secrecy. Lightfoot's findings suggested that the absence of transparency was not merely an oversight, but part of a larger pattern of financial mismanagement. The former mayor pointed out that, without access to key financial information, the trustees had been left vulnerable to potential mismanagement and fraud, and their ability to safeguard taxpayer dollars was severely compromised. The investigation also highlighted concerns about the effectiveness of internal controls within the village government and pointed to a systemic breakdown in accountability. In light of these findings, Lightfoot recommended a series of reforms aimed at improving the transparency and efficiency of financial operations within the village. These recommendations included the implementation of clearer reporting procedures, more stringent oversight of financial decisions, and the establishment of independent audits to ensure ongoing accountability. She also called for better communication between the trustees and the village administration to ensure that key stakeholders were kept informed about financial matters moving forward. The revelations from Lightfoot's investigation sent shockwaves through the community and raised significant concerns among residents. Many questioned how such a lack of transparency could have persisted for so long and what impact it had on the village's finances and public trust. Some expressed frustration over the apparent disregard for the trustees' role in overseeing spending, while others feared that the mismanagement might have left the village vulnerable to financial instability. In the wake of Lightfoot's report, the village trustees and local officials promised to take immediate action to address the issues raised. Public forums and meetings were held to discuss the findings and ensure that the community was kept informed about the steps being taken to rectify the situation. The investigation had clearly uncovered a serious issue within the village government, but the real question remained: would the changes proposed by Lightfoot be enough to restore trust and ensure that such a breakdown in transparency would never happen again? Only time would tell. But for now, the focus was on rebuilding accountability and safeguarding public resources for the future.
By March 2022, the trustees were effectively cut off from receiving regular financial reports.
Over the course of 9 months, Lori Lightfoot meticulously examined the village's credit card transactions from 2020. Among her findings, 3 separate charges totaling a staggering $779,000 were made on Amazon, raising immediate red flags about the financial oversight within the village government. Additionally, more than $50,000 was spent on artificial ice tiles for a winter rink, a purchase that further caught Lightfoot's attention. However, Lightfoot's investigation revealed that these significant expenditures were not in compliance with the village's established purchasing policies. The purchases, which were made without the necessary approval processes and oversight, raised concerns about the lack of proper financial controls and transparency. According to Lightfoot, the lack of adherence to purchasing protocols not only violated standard procedures, but also left the village vulnerable to potential misuse of public funds. The investigation into these transactions became a focal point of Lightfoot's report, highlighting broader issues related to financial management within the village. These findings, combined with other discrepancies she uncovered, painted a troubling picture of how public funds were being handled and exposed the gaps in oversight that had allowed such purchases to occur without scrutiny. In March of 2023, Mayor Tiffany Henyard allegedly issued an order for the village to stop responding to Freedom of Information Act (FOIA) requests, a move that raised significant concerns among residents, journalists, and local watchdogs. The decision to halt responses to these requests was seen as a direct blow to transparency and accountability within the village's government, and it quickly became a focal point of public outcry. The Freedom of Information Act is a vital tool for citizens, media outlets, and advocacy groups to obtain important government records and ensure that public officials are held accountable for their actions. By suspending responses to FOIA requests, Henyard's alleged directive not only undermined the public's right to access critical information, but also sent a troubling message about the administration's willingness to operate in the open. It seemed as though the mayor was actively trying to shield the village's activities from scrutiny, further fueling concerns about possible misconduct. Former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, who had been tasked with investigating the village's financial mismanagement, addressed this situation in her report. Lightfoot sharply criticized Henyard's order, writing that it exposed a fundamental flaw in the village's operations. According to Lightfoot, the village's FOIA process was already fundamentally broken before the order to stop responding to requests. But this decision exacerbated the issue, creating an even more opaque government environment. The decision to stop fulfilling these requests was, in Lightfoot's view, a clear attempt to avoid transparency, particularly at a time when public trust in the village's leadership was already at a low point. Lightfoot's report revealed that the village had long struggled with fulfilling FOIA requests in a timely and thorough manner. The system in place was inefficient, often leading to delays in responses and sometimes incomplete or inadequate information being provided to requesters. But Henyard's move to halt all responses altogether pushed the situation to an even more extreme level, essentially blocking any avenue for the public or the press to investigate or question the administration's actions. This decision drew widespread condemnation from various quarters. Journalists, who rely on FOIA requests to uncover important stories, expressed frustration at the mayor's apparent disregard for the public's right to know. Advocates for government transparency also voiced concerns about the implications for the democratic process, arguing that such actions eroded public trust and undermined the village's commitment to open governance. The fallout from Henyard's directive was swift and severe. Legal experts and transparency advocates warned that blocking FOIA responses could have significant legal consequences for the village, potentially leading to lawsuits and other challenges. There were also growing calls for the resignation of Mayor Henyard, as critics questioned her commitment to ethical leadership and the public good. At a time when the village was already under investigation for financial mismanagement, this new development only deepened the scrutiny and raised alarms about the potential cover-up of misconduct. In response to the backlash, Henyard and her administration remained largely silent, with no immediate public explanation offered for the decision to suspend FOIA responses. The move only intensified the public's perception that the mayor was attempting to hide crucial information and avoid accountability for her administration's actions. The situation prompted more discussions about the importance of transparency in government, especially in light of the financial mismanagement concerns that were already under investigation. Ultimately, Lightfoot's report painted a grim picture of the village's governance under Henyard's leadership. The failure to comply with FOIA laws, coupled with the ongoing financial mismanagement, further fueled the community's sense of distrust. The controversy surrounding the mayor's actions in March 2023 added yet another layer to the growing scandal, leaving many to question how the village could restore accountability and regain the public's confidence in its leadership.
It's really a criminal offense, in my opinion, how she have squandered our finances and to leave us.
The findings of Lori Lightfoot's investigation were made public just 1 month before Mayor Tiffany Henyard was set to campaign for re-election in the Democratic primary for mayor. The timing of the revelations could not have been more significant, casting a shadow over Henyard's bid for a second term. As the investigation into the village's financial mismanagement and lack of transparency continued to unfold, these new findings put the mayor's leadership under intense scrutiny just as she prepared to face voters. One of the most concerning aspects of Lightfoot's report involved the village's decision to cancel its insurance coverage for the upcoming 2024 to 2025 period. According to Lightfoot, the cancellation of this coverage was tied to a deliberate strategy aimed at securing a new insurance policy that would be more favorable for the village, one that would likely be easier to obtain in the wake of the growing controversies surrounding Henyard's administration. This maneuver, which involved a significant shift in the village's insurance arrangements, raised additional questions about the mayor's motivations and whether her administration was attempting to shield itself from the fallout of the ongoing financial investigations. Lightfoot suggested that the decision to cancel the insurance coverage was not a routine or ordinary step. Rather, it seemed to be a calculated effort to avoid potential liabilities that might arise as a result of the public scrutiny the village was facing. By restructuring its insurance policies at this critical juncture, the village appeared to be attempting to avoid the consequences of legal and financial risks. including any potential claims related to the ongoing investigations. This raised alarms that the administration might have been trying to shield itself from the implications of the financial mismanagement and the lack of transparency that had been exposed by Lightfoot's findings. The combination of the financial mismanagement findings and the insurance cancellation painted a troubling picture of the Henyard administration's actions leading up to the mayoral primary. With Henyard seeking re-election amid accusations of negligence and possible cover-ups, her campaign was suddenly thrust into a much more contentious and negative spotlight. The timing of the report, coming just weeks before voters would head to the polls, made it all the more difficult for Henyard to overcome the growing perception that her leadership had been deeply flawed and that her administration had failed in its responsibilities to the public furthermore. The investigation highlighted how the lack of accountability in Henyard's leadership had affected not only the village's finances, but also its ability to function transparently and effectively. This revelation was a stark reminder to voters that, despite promises of reform and progress, the mayor had allowed serious problems to persist under her watch. The cancellation of the insurance policy, while possibly a necessary administrative move, was now seen by many as another example of the administration attempting to avoid the negative consequences of its previous actions. As the election approached, Lightfoot's report became a focal point of political debate, with challengers to Henyard's re-election bid using the findings to criticize her record and to argue that the village needed new leadership. The public's frustration with the administration's lack of transparency and accountability only intensified, making it harder for Henyard to regain the trust of voters who were already concerned about the future of the village. In the final stretch, leading up to the Democratic primary, Henyard's campaign found itself in a precarious position, with the weight of Lightfoot's investigation hanging heavily over her re-election bid. The timing of the findings, coupled with the cancellation of the insurance coverage, only served to underscore the challenges Henyard would face in convincing voters that she was the right person to lead the village into the future. The situation left many questioning whether the mayor would be able to recover from the mounting criticisms in time for the primary or if her political career would be irreparably damaged by the fallout from the investigation. Late tonight, Mayor Tiffany Henyard's attorney, Bo Brinley, issued a statement in response to the recent findings from Lori Lightfoot's investigation. In part, Brinley dismissed the credibility of Lightfoot's report, calling it preposterous to give any weight to the conclusions about the financial decisions of another mayor. He went on to claim that the investigation was nothing more than an effort by a failed political figure desperately seeking the limelight to which she is no longer entitled. The statement suggested that Lightfoot's actions were motivated by personal ambition rather than a genuine desire for transparency or accountability. At the same time, Brinley highlighted what he described as real progress being made under Henyard's leadership. According to the attorney, the village had already seen significant improvements in its financial standing. Brinley pointed to the efforts made by the trustees who had hired Lightfoot last year, emphasizing the reduction in the village's deficit. Last summer, the deficit had stood at $3.65 million, but by the fall, it had decreased to $2.4 million, indicating that the village was on the right track financially. The attorney's statement underscored the growing tension between Henyard's administration and the external criticism levied by Lightfoot and others. While Henyard's legal team defended the mayor's actions and progress, the ongoing investigation and the public discourse surrounding the financial mismanagement continued to cast a shadow over the administration's efforts, especially with the mayoral primary fast approaching.